Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My only comment on this exchange is that I think you may be providing a little bit more pushback than is necessary on Senator Markey's foundational point, which is that as much as it matters what you think you mean in the context of diplomacy, it matters more what the actor on the other side thinks you mean. And so it's relevant but not dispositive as to what Ambassador Bolton thought he meant when he said that. We need to think about what the other actor interprets that as. And I just think it strains credibility to suggest that it's outside of the realm of possibility or completely unfair or unwarranted for Kim to read that as an advertisement that we are going to repeat the mistake that we made years ago. I want to come back to the budget for a second, and I'll probably go off the budget if I have time as well. I want to talk to you about the consequences of some of these cuts. We regularly read reports of Russian money and influence flowing into the Balkans at rates that, frankly, we did not see before the Trump administration. They see an opportunity as we withdraw from the Balkans to essentially set up a new front, a new hybrid scenario like we've seen in Ukraine. They're buying up media companies, they're securing contracts for oil and gas, they're bribing government officials, they're funding biker gangs, martial arts clubs, all sorts of pseudo-militaries. It really looks a lot like the lead up to what happened in eastern Ukraine. But this budget that you're presenting to us calls for governance funding cuts of 91% in Albania, 75% cuts in Macedonia, 69% in Serbia, 67% in Bosnia. I mean, these are catastrophic withdrawals of funding and another signal, a very clear signal to the Russians that we're out and you should fill the void. So my question is why? Why are you proposing these big funding cuts to governance programs in the Balkans?
You're talking about the budget numbers, the budget numbers that were sent down for FY 2019. Is that where the data set that comes from? Well, we have a 2-year agreement on what we're going to spend, and I am confident that the Russians can see that we are not, in fact, doing what you described. We're active. I've had, I promise, per capita more than its fair share of time in my first 3 weeks spent on this set of issues. They're very important. I know them well. They're not just State Department issues. There are others involved, too. But I agree with you. The threat there of the Russians continuing to move aggressively is very real and one that we have an obligation to counter.
But how can you do that when you're cutting funding for those programs?
But we're not going to, Senator. We're going to have the resources we need.
But why propose it?
Yeah, FY 2020. I wasn't around. I can only speak to what I'm going to endeavor to do. I'm going to try and make sure we have every dollar we need to deliver not only on that mission in the Balkans, but each of our missions around the world.
I want to bring you, and I appreciate your verbal commitment to the region. I think if we don't pay some attention to it now, we're going to be really sorry later.
I agree. I completely agree.
Let me bring you back to Yemen. You've had a couple questions on Yemen. Maybe let me ask the questions that Senator Paul might not have gotten to. There is no evidence that we have had any success in changing the trajectory of civilian deaths on the ground. In fact, it's the exact opposite. April was the worst month for civilian deaths inside Yemen. Since we had the debate on the Senate floor, a private residence in Sadr was bombed, killing 20. A residence in Hudaydah was bombed, killing 12, 7 kids. A gas station in Hijaz, killing 24. A commuter bus in Taiz, killing 20. The civilian death count is getting worse, not better. And so what evidence can you provide to the committee that we are having success in our efforts to try to make sure that civilians are not the casualties of a bombing campaign that we continue to assist the Saudis and the Emiratis in?
I don't know the data the same way you did. I'll take it at its face value. There's a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about that. We still have risks. We have humanitarian risks too that remain. You talked about the civilian deaths. There's still real risks of outbreaks of disease. Those are all very real. I met with the new envoy there. It's a long, hard negotiation road that's in front of him. I am hopeful that some of the things that have transpired that he's been able to do with all the parties, both the Hadi government, the Saudis, the Emiratis, will yield a political outcome that will stop this death, which at the end of the day is the only way that really gets fixed.
But with all due respect, there is no political process. In fact, very much the opposite. We had a hearing with your acting Assistant Secretary for the region, Mr. Satterfield, in which we asked about the planned assault on Hudaydah. The coalition has been wanting for a long time to march on Hudaydah. The United States has pressed the coalition to refrain from taking that course because 80% of the humanitarian relief supplies come through Hudaydah. Mr. Satterfield said in front of this committee, we would not view such an action as consistent with our own policy upon which our support is based, suggesting that we might pull our support if they go for Hudaydah. They're going for Hudaydah. They are marching on Hudaydah as we speak. They are planning to launch an assault. So why were we not successful in convincing them to refrain from an assault on Hudaydah? And will we contemplate pulling our support if they continue with a military campaign that will turn a nightmare into a cataclysm from a humanitarian perspective?
So we've made clear our view on that. I think Ambassador Satterfield sounds like he adequately communicated that to you. Our primary objective there, well, there's multiple, but we certainly are concerned about what the humanitarian outcomes are of such a thing, and we've articulated that to them as well.
But why continue to be part of this coalition if we have no effect on the most important decisions that are being made by the coalition?
Yeah, you assume a status quo absent our involvement that might not be the case. Right? It's the case that our involvement may well, however bad things are today, it could be that our involvement has made them less worse than they would be. That's bad grammar, but the truth.
Yeah,
You have to concede that there have been many cases where our involvement has absolutely improved the lives, reduced the humanitarian catastrophe that was taking place. There are absolutely places where our involvement has made a material difference. And so as bad as it is our judgment today that it is still worth engaging.
I think that's a hard case to be made given the reality of the conflict on the ground in Yemen, that our involvement has made things better for the Yemeni people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.